Life becomes this consciousness that can convey itself forward and forward, and you're breaking it. Now I can see it's humanity in trouble.
How could healthy green juices and green smoothies be a problem?
Because we think they're so great for us. We think we're choosing to do a green smoothie to get healthy and be vibrant and live a long life without disease. And in fact, it might actually be the source of pain, suffering, bad sleep, all kinds of common problems with stomach and your mood, like almond butter, almond milk, turmeric, like what else goes in? Berries, a few chia seeds, and some extra nuts for good comfort. All of those foods are loaded with plant toxins.
What is the major plant toxin that you focus on and that really is a big problem, especially when it comes to these green juices and vegetables?
It's called oxalate or oxalates or oxalic acid. And that's because this thing changes a bit. The oxalic acid is in nature, made by plants, made by other things too, just spontaneously forms. It's actually just chemically a degeneration project where you get, quote, oxidation of other molecules and it becomes oxalate. So it's easy for plants to make oxalic acid and they need it for their physiology and so on. It has a charge on it. It has a negative charge, and then it drops the other proton and it can have two negative charges, which hooks up nicely to positively charged minerals like magnesium, iron, you name it, including calcium. And so in nature, it's usually calcium plus oxalic acid. They call it an oxalate or call it calcium oxalate. Your doctor just calls it calcium. But calcium is the innocent victim that loves to hook up with oxalate and vice versa, oxalic acid, and forms these little molecules that get together and precipitate out as little crystals. Oxalic acid becomes these mineral crystals that can that plants deliberately build. You're eating these hard, glassy crystals plus acid together, and the acid gets into your bloodstream and it starts crystallizing in the body. And it can happen anywhere. It's delivered by the blood. It goes all over the body, starts messing up your electrolytes, stealing calcium, really critical minerals that help your cells work, keeps your heart beating, really basic things that you need can get messed up because we're ignoring plant toxins. The kidneys try to clean it out, and so the kidneys are busy trying to protect you from it and remove it. And some people, a small percentage of people, maybe 12%, have trouble with that process of removing it, and it gets balled up as kidney stones.
Well, the thing that surprised me the most learning about your work was that it accumulates in the body. I wasn't expecting that. I was like, okay, I just stop eating these foods and everything's good, because, you know, that was the beginning of the rabbit hole for me. And then after I got your book and I started reading, like, no, don't just stop taking it after 5 years of having a high oxalate diet. You have to kind of wean yourself off of this.
But a lot of us, we don't get the kidney stones. If we got kidney stones, it's because we're really at the end. We've really overdone it. And we've been wearing out our kidneys so long that they can no longer do their normally fantastic job of preventing kidney stones.
Where else can this accumulate in the body?
Anywhere. It loves calcium, so it ends up in your bones and your bone marrow. It ends up in your eyeballs. You see, because in capillary beds, capillaries are the finest, skinniest little vascular tissue where your arteries turn into these fine little capillary beds, and then they become veins on the other side. The capillary bed is where the blood pushes out the nutrients and the oxalate, oxalic acid, into your eyeballs, into your other tissues, and stresses that vascular system, and it starts collecting in the eyes. And the eyes, you know, and ears have a certain pH, and it tends to get trapped there more easily. So it's in your eyes, it gets into your brain, your teeth, your sinuses, your thyroid glands. So the glands tend to pick it up real easily. They need to make things, so they need a lot of materials. They sweep in things. So they're very accepting of this blood that's high volume. I think about a fire hose or a fire hydrant. Like that water is coming out at high real pressure. That's what's happening in the capillary beds. There's this pressure that pushes this oxalate into the tissues, and then the lymph and the veins on the vein side of the capillaries have to remove it from the tissues. But in the meantime, that local tissue is getting exposed, and the vascular tissue, and the blood cells, your white blood cells that fight infection and your red blood cells that deliver oxygen and so on, are all intermingling with this toxic thing that messes up the membranes, the mitochondria, and the physiology of the cells. The cells don't work the same. They become inflamed. And this is coming from foods we trust to be healthy. It's crazy.
you just mentioned inflammation. I'm really curious about that specifically, because so many people deal with chronic inflammation in random places. We go see the doctor and they're like, oh, here, take this medication, that medication for this isolated case, which causes a bunch of other problems. So I'm just curious, like, is there a possibility that oxalates can be a root cause of common chronic inflammation?
I would say it is definitely a root cause of chronic inflammation. If you eat a lot of oxalate, you're going to end up with inflammatory problems. There's an interesting study that was done fairly recently by a group in Birmingham, Alabama, giving 40 volunteers a spinach smoothie that basically had orange juice and spinach, and it was kind of a fruity, kind of not heavy nut, kind of the one we described. It was a simpler spinach smoothie that had about 720 milligrams of oxalate in it from the spinach. And within 40 minutes, the circulating white blood cells were in inflammation. They were putting out pro-inflammatory messages. They themselves were sick and calling for help. Help us, we've been damaged. And then, so now they're not able to fight infection. So already you may not even notice it. You don't get those symptoms 40 minutes after the spinach smoothie. You have no idea that your immune system's going, help us. Ouch. Like, you don't know. This is all happening under the hood. Most diseases, you don't really get symptoms until things have been going on a while, until damage is happening, until you start wearing down your reserves and your general, let's go forward with life. The body's doing its best to be the best it can be. And you're just innocently destroying it.
100%. And it's frustrating because then you go see the doctor for like this list of things, and it turns out they're all related, but you don't know. And you talk to your doctor about it, and they're like, okay, you need this for that and this for that. And then you go down this rabbit hole and realize, hold on a second, all these things are related to the same root cause problem, and I can solve them by mitigating the way that what I eat. So because that was my experience. And I've been part of your group coaching. I saw people from all over the world who have also come to that realization. And it's just interesting how doctors only see this problem from a
kidney stone problem. And that's been the last 50, 60, 70 years. They've isolated it to just the kidney stones, when we had a long history before that, knowing it was way more than that. But you've landed on what for me was the most, should have been obvious, but was profound to me. I had been thinking, because that's how we think in Western healthcare, that all of these problems were separate. You mean my digestive problems, my sleep problems, my pain problems, my arthritis, my memory problems, my mental fatigue, my physical, they were all the same. Well, of course, that makes sense. Like, you have one general systemic poisoning that hurts all your tissues and turns on inflammation, which can turn on anywhere and affect your thyroid gland, mess up your metabolism, mess with your cortisol levels, and do so many things. Of course, once you start messing with mitochondria, membranes, your immune system, your vascular system, you start collecting things in critical tissues like your pituitary gland and other metabolic, of course you're going to have multiple things go wrong.
I just want to make mention of something, because being part of the spiritual community, we all often hear about ascension symptoms. So when we are going through a spiritual awakening and ongoing, oftentimes we experience these symptoms that come from energy upgrades, light codes, downloads, lots of different ways that we can receive information. We become more sensitive, we become more grounded in our body, we start to feel things more. Our sixth sensibility starts to develop. So sometimes that is accompanied with strange symptoms. It's real, it exists, I'm not denying it. This all resembles oxalate poisoning. And I can't help but just put out the message that, hey, if you're experiencing ongoing ascension symptoms, is becoming intolerable, problematic, your doctor has no clue what it is. Well, I just want to put out the message that, hey, maybe it might be interesting to explore the oxalate rabbit hole, because the symptoms are very similar. Like, it touches on the nervous system, everything that we just mentioned, chronic inflammation, headaches, all these weird symptoms that our doctors are going to look at as separate problems. Maybe there's a possibility it could be oxalates,
Oh, you've got me thinking about so many things. For one thing, spiritual texts make it sound like you don't even need food to be spiritual. So they tend to drive you towards behaviors that just don't make sense here in the material world that we're still part of. Yes, we have a big spiritual side, but we have to still balance the fact that we are material beings. It's like, give me Madonna all the way. So there's that piece. And it's really interesting that, I could not sit and meditate when I was poisoning myself with oxalate, when I was a vegan and eating whole wheat bread and beans and things. Meditating increased my mental fatigue. It made me feel worse. And once I got off the oxalate, the freedom to be able to sit and focus is amazing. So your ability to just be calm and peaceful and happy and empty your mind of worry or excessive thinking or worrying or planning, all those things that you try to set aside when you're meditating, that becomes easy. It's like become a guru, cut out the oxalates. So that's cool. And then the other thing is that I've had people say, as the body starts shedding the oxalates, they stop eating them, and as the recovery process happens, they have access to old memories, some of them traumatic memories of being molested as a child or whatever, or their hang up with their ex relationship suddenly just becomes easily unraveling itself, and you can let things go. So you get access to trauma, you get to process trauma, and you get to grow past it and just set it aside. It's amazing.
That is amazing. That's why I find this topic so fascinating. I mean, why would oxalates be so interesting? Because like we've been encouraged to poison ourselves in a way. Like I really want to get deeper into the spiritual aspect before we go there though. Because on a podcast you said that being vegan actually became popular around the 80s, and I was surprised it is actually pretty recent. And so I was wondering, what role do you think dogma and doctrine play in imposing the belief that we need to eat plants?
Well, in the modern era, I mean, the thought that we should live on just plants and be peaceful beings, I think comes out of the original philosophies of sort of the Renaissance and so on that led to the American Revolution, that we should not yoke ourselves under the king. Right. And by the way, maybe we shouldn't yoke our animals either. And maybe it's wrong for us to steward the animals and hold them captive in any way. So it was a kind of an extension of that. And then it's a whole extension of Christian morality. With alcoholism was quite a big problem in the 17 and 1800s. And preachers came over from England and so forth to the North American, we were the US by then, teaching people to not beat their wives and sodomize their animals and basically quit being a drunk that wasted family money. Like, come on, shape up, boys. It was a big ministry. Come to God and eat bran. And so there was major elites doing this, major elites. There was a huge vegan, vegetarian meeting of formation of society in 1850. People like Emily Bloomer were there. She was the woman who said women don't have to wear skirts. They could wear pantaloon type of clothing, and it was before the bicycle was invented, but there was a lot of these elites who were trying to be reformers of society who were embracing veganism back in the mid 1800s. It was a big wave then. But then we had the modern era in the late 70s with the whole eco movement and the whole kind of global consciousness about third world versus first world, another form of the king taking over the people in a way where the rich countries were involved in the politics of the poor countries because we were extracting wealth, cheap bananas, cheap fuel, whatever, right? So there was, a larger kind of global problem that led to this consciousness of we should be thoughtful in our consumer decisions and so on. And so a woman named Frances Moore LePay put out a big book called Diet for New America. So this book was very influential. It was influential to me. And it turns out that her main motive for teaching a vegan diet, or mostly vegan diet, was to get us politically involved and start thinking about our consumer behavior. It wasn't really a nutrition book, but she taught you how to combine your soy and your grains to get a more complete protein and made it look like a nutrition book. And we all picked it up as if it was not only culturally and morally the right thing to do, to have integrity and have a sort of spiritual basis and a consciousness in your lifestyle. You should care about your food and eat low on the whatever. And it was all really just effort to get the populace more politically engaged, more politically conscious, but it was hidden. That message was hidden as a nutrition message. And so it was slightly deceptive, but it really created a fertile soil for people to pick up the vegan message, which was advanced quite quickly through the vegetarian journal and vegetarian magazines and so on that were available to those of us who were interested in this lifestyle, thanks to Francis LePay. And we picked up John Robbins' book, Diet for New America, Diet for New America. And he was the vegan guy. So he took all of us who were kind of Francis LePay vegetarians, still doing dairy and occasional eggs, and now going full vegan. So we drop our yogurt, we quit that occasional Sunday pancake with eggs in it, and we get all real strict. And things go from bad to worse.
Right, exactly. I mean, in one of your talks, you mentioned that human potential is being stifled by this, like by oxalates. And I was curious, like, what do you think human potential is beyond all of this?
Infinite. We have so much intelligence to tap into and so much goodness. And we're fundamentally caring, communal, social. Now we have the whole ape thing where, you know, there's the warrior male in us that competes for position. And the more social position we get, the more power we get, the more likely we are to abuse power. You know, so you want non-hierarchical power as much as you can with humans. They need to be social decision makers. There needs to be community. There needs to be wise elders. There needs to be tradition respected and understood why it's there. But in modern times, we just keep inventing new technologies, and we're all like 12-year-olds on steroids, and we don't have good judgment anymore. And we're becoming that way in our professions as well. So people are using faddist thinking and not logical and not traditional respect in their professions in public health and medicine and all these serious professions, research. A lot of it is so fad-based because you require funding. Funding is decided by major government agencies and nonprofit foundations that are based on emotional decision-making that have to do with the latest problem of obesity and diabetes and so on. So the best minds go to whatever's popular, and you use the popular language, and you start creating this world where instead of science is about observation of actual phenomenon, science is about adding a theory to the other guy's theory to the other guy's theory. And we get into this theoretical stuff, and we invest belief in that. We're culturally bought into that, and we've lost the ability to actually work in the real world of observation, which is where science really is.
For human potential, you were just talking about how we use technology, and earlier you mentioned what was spiritual bypassing. It's like we are in this physical body and we're trying to ascend or get out of it or live forever, and we're going to use technology to do that, or we're going to use like these spiritual practices and all these things. I think it's unfortunate because we haven't had the potential to explore everything that the human body is capable of. And now they're talking about implanting these chips and all this technology. We're going to be connected to Wi-Fi. How have we not explored the depths of humanity without injecting ourselves with like tech or anything like that, you know, or oxalates?
So if you think about all the pictures of what spirituality is, and you think about the chakras and the auras and the different colors and energies of the different elements that goes into the physical being, exuding the spiritual and the energetic. But every cell membrane is a spiritual energetic membrane. The information is being running around on electrons. So electrons are this energy potential. Electrons, they don't even know what they are. Like they're fields of energy potential, but that's sort of like an aura, right? It's this space of information, the space of like knowingness, the space of some consciousness going on. So electrons are carrying this field of consciousness, and the electrons are running around on hydrated molecules, these strings of amino acids that create like this matrix that gives shape, physical structure, and electromagnetic structures to cells and cell membranes. This is all the battery that we call life. Mm-hmm. Life runs on membranes, and that membrane is a whole electromagnetic structure. And it's all spiritual. Like a rock is spiritual, your membrane. So you throw in interferences in these electric fields, and you mess up everything.
Are oxalates an interference in that electric field, according to you?
Absolutely, no doubt. 100%, they have electric charges. They are messing up that electricity of the membranes. They're causing membrane structures to flip. Like what should be on the inside is now on the outside. They're affecting the how everything works. It starts breaking down that the structural information that allows life to be organized and persist and to insist on itself. So life becomes this consciousness. Life becomes this consciousness that can convey itself forward and forward, and you're breaking it.
Okay, look, this is perfect, because what do you think about the argument that we need light, high vibrational, alive diet, you know, in order to ascend vibrationally or to raise our consciousness? Because this is a big discussion. Like that's the tea in the spiritual community.
It depends on which community you tap into. If you think about the Native Americans of North America, their spirituality was based on the ruminant animals that they hunted. That was the center of God, was having a good relationship with the buffalo. And I think before that, it was the woolly mammoth and all that. I think humans traditionally, as in our niche ecologically, we have to be in our niche because we're nested. This body is nested in a social structure. I have to be nested in a family. In order to survive birth and childhood, I have to have nurturing, loving parents that give me a sense of security and identity so that I can grow that spiritual side of myself and express it in the world that's safe, right? And then we have a physical environment of air and water and food and sunlight and seasons and temperature that we can live with. And we have to use the animals to keep our feet warm with the hides and so on. We are so embedded as another living being, a part of this ecosystem. How can we separate ourselves out of this ecosystem? We are earthlings, first and foremost. Our first God is our environment of earth itself. So if we're not earthlings and not recognizing our position in the eco stack of earth, we're not algae, we're not minnows, we're not crabs, we're not butterflies. We are human, the great hunter, with this arm that can throw a spear, with these eyes that like to sit in the distance, with this lazy tendency to want to sit on the cliff and wait for the animal to come by, or sit in a tree branch and like drop a rock on somebody to eat it. That's who we are. If we can't own who we are in the planet, then we're spiritually lost.
Look, I don't think any vegan or vegetarian would walk up to an Inuit or any Native American indigenous tribe member and say to them, oh, your people aren't spiritual because you hunt and eat meat. Like, no. I guess when I say spiritual community, I'm mostly like the typical Western spiritual kind of narrative that we constantly hear. But you just mentioned nature, our relationship with nature. And on one of your podcasts, you said that we treat nature like a Disney movie. And I kind of wanted to touch on that again from a spiritual perspective. Like, how is it that we view nature as like nature's bounty? We can consume anything and it's going to be great for us, you know?
Yeah, it's pretty silly because nature is all about survival of the one with the best teeth, you know. It's like you have to a tiger is going to rip something to shreds and do well on that. There's a certain eat or be eaten concept, and it's not necessarily all violence. It is the essence of life trying to perpetuate itself. Life eats life to perpetuate itself forward. And from our little innocent perspective of needing to be nonviolent amongst ourselves, we see all forms of that as sort of a type of violence. And if we can't be, it's hard for us to make sense out of that, you know. So it's much easier to tell a child story of, hey, everything's all sweet and nice. The birds and the bees are there to love you. Don't forget the part about the wasp is going to hurt you. You know, the wasp doesn't take much for it to decide you deserve to be bitten, or a mosquito or anything else. And if you try to stay in a tent in the jungle at the wrong time of year, you know, the leaf cutter ants are going to cut holes in your tent, and all the other tarantulas and everyone else are going to come in and not have mercy on you. That's just, I didn't invent it. It's just kind of how it works. You know that Disney takeoff movie of what's it called? Enchanted or something? Oh, I wish I could remember it.
I don't know.
I have to find a clip from this because she comes down to New York City. She's the Disney princess, and the animals come to her, and they're all cockroaches and rats and stuff.
Okay.
We only want to think about certain animals too, when we think about how lovely the animals are.
Absolutely. Preparing for this interview, I wanted to watch some contrary opinions, just to see like what are vegan and vegetarian communities saying about oxalates. And the interviews that I found, they were all saying that all you need pretty much is to have the right bacteria, enzymes, and probiotics to break down oxalates. So it's not really an issue, even if and there's a lot of denial about this even being a real thing because the testing is so difficult. So what would you say to that? We just need bacteria, enzymes, and probiotics?
Well, first of all, this is another form of hubris because we know very little about the microbiome and how it works. We know very little about how the body handles oxalate. Science is like hardly spent the real energy we need to understand oxalate and how the body protects itself from oxalates and handles it. And it's quite different in each person, the situation. There's so many variables. The idea that anybody knows more than the collective knowledge of science and can say pat answers like that is just, that's just people talking. That's
right.
Thinking, okay, but the fact is that the active part of your microbiome is primarily the colon. That's where you have the really intense microbiome stuff going on. And you have to have a healthy colon that has the cells that are working so well that you keep a sort of anaerobic environment and you have the right bacteria there. And if your system is stressed because your cells can't make enough energy because there's a lot of oxalate and poor nutrition around, you're not going to maintain a good microbiome. And no probiotic is going to fix that because it has to be about your health. And we don't even know which probiotics you need. We don't know how to colonize them. That's the body's job. The body, the colon and the small intestines are like a gardener. That gardener puts out the right water and nutrients and sunshine, mucus, and so on to encourage the right growth, and puts out other things, including inflammation, to cut back the growth. So that it does a lot of weeding and tending to create the microbiome that works well for the body. We're not a passive piece of plastic that you can paint some bacteria on and have all be well. That's silliness. It really is about your health, how good your microbiome is maintained, and how you recover from antibiotics and all this. But the truth is, everybody's microbiome isn't what it should be because of overuse of antibiotics. And the other truth is that soluble oxalate, which is dissolved in water, say in a cup of tea or in a juice, a spinach juice, is absorbed very rapidly right from the stomach. Your stomach doesn't have much of a microbiome. There's some bacteria around, but its acidity is like 2.0 or something insanely acid in order to have very few bacteria living there and to help you digest protein, to protect you from eating pathogenic organisms, right? Because in normal life, before hygiene and Clorox everywhere, you just ate like a worm out of the ground. There was plenty of bacteria. You had to protect yourself to some degree, and you're already absorbing oxalate from the stomach. And so without a microbiome, much to protect, there's no oxalate degrading going on in the stomach. If anything, that acid just liberates the crystals, helps to dissolve them more and make it more absorbable, so more of it gets in your bloodstream. So you're digesting oxalate fairly quickly in the first hour up to the, all the way through your digestive system. You can keep absorbing oxalate. But if you're going to wait that 24 hours for that food to leave and finally get around to degrading the oxalate, what you're degrading at that stage is stuff that you've re-excreted back into the colon, not stuff that you're preventing from getting into your vascular system. You do not want oxalic acid entering your bloodstream, messing with your white blood cells, your red blood cells, and going straight to your liver, stressing out your liver, using up the glutathione, causing your liver to have to protect itself, and then moving right from your liver through the blood vessels, more mixing with the cells and so on, to your heart, then to your lungs, then to your heart, then pushed out to general circulation. And then later on, the kidneys will remove it, and then the colon might go, hey, I can help you, kidneys, and I'll try to excrete some too. And that's where your bacteria are really encouraging the colon to excrete oxalate. That's wonderful. But what about your bloodstream and your liver and your stomach and your teeth, your mouth? Literally, the crystals that you're eating are so hard, they're harder than your teeth. And you eat a lot of them. Now, we don't eat anymore because the blender does all the chewing. So you're free. You can just swallow those crystals and not grind your teeth up, just bother your stomach with them instead.
I have a feeling we are like denying the downsides of eating plants because many of us have made it our identity. Like, I'm a vegan, I'm a vegetarian. How does ego get in the way in this situation?
Don't we love being right? And once we've signed up for a club, our club is right, and we're going to root for our team that never wins every time. And that's better, to win for the underdogs. I mean, to root for the underdogs. Isn't that a better, more noble place to be to root for the Red Sox instead of the Yankees. So we're really big as Red Sox vegans, sticking with our team, no matter what. No matter how much evidence is showing us it's not working for us personally, it's not working for our family, it's not working generally well for humanity, we are not going to admit that. We're just pushing harder.
I really find it fascinating that like many people in the spiritual community are looking at the system and being like, I don't agree with what I see. And I want to choose something better for myself, my family, my self-sovereignty, my freedom, my spiritual independence. And so all these things are important. And then sometimes we get confronted with what I perceive as mainstream narratives within the community. Abundance in money is a very good thing. Well, when we actually go question the money, we realize abundance in money is terrible. Otherwise, there would be abundance everywhere on the planet right now. So abundance in money creates scarcity everywhere else. That was coined by Jeff Booth, and it's absolutely true. And I recommend anyone try to go down that rabbit hole to disprove it. And then when it comes to foods and we look at vegan and vegetarianism, and then we realize, hey, oxalates are actually pretty dangerous. We can't cook them out of our foods. Like you have tables in your book that demonstrate that you can't cook it out. Like it's still there. It can still get into our body. So I'm just curious about your opinion. Why do you think the spiritual community is so attracted to the vegan vegetarian narrative? And specifically, it's 90% women too. Like there's so many women in this group that are ruining their health with this. So I'm just curious about your opinion on that.
It really does have this morality attached to it, and has from the beginning, that it's got to be better to not eat a living animal directly. It's better to eat them indirectly with how you destroy the land with your combines and your chemicals and your monoculture, and go ahead and have a coffee, a banana, and a bagel. And that's moral. If you knew anything about what it took to bring you coffee, bananas, and bagels and chocolate, you would not be sitting so high on your moral chair.
The denial is really intense, because sometimes I bring this up and it's just like, don't want to talk about it. And I find it unfortunate, because if we really do open ourselves to explore this and really understand what's going on, we come to realize that we're hurting the planet, we're hurting ourselves, even though our intentions are good. And it's okay to make mistakes. And actually, I was going to talk about this at the end, but Sally, I really admire how you stepped into your power, because you've made a lot of mistakes and you've talked about it on your podcast. Like as a kid, you were so passionate about this and you wanted to go help people with their nutrition and like save people. And you knew that the food was at the base layer of a lot of the health issues that we experience. And you made so many mistakes throughout your life and you didn't know. You were doing your best and you were trying to like help people and follow the right narratives and everything. And then you came to realize, hey, I fucked up. And now I can do better. Now I can step into my power and help people and actually yeah. So, I admire that.
The thing that really floored me is how I had all the privileges of having friends in public health, medicine, and holistic healing. I have chiropractors and acupuncturists and massage therapists and homeopaths and everybody in my court. Holistic functional medicine doctors, work in hospitals. I have all this wealth of knowledge around me. And I went to Cornell University for nutrition. That's considered El Primo. And I have a very nice graduate degree in public health, and I've been privileged enough to work in mainstream academia, writing research grants and doing this work, working in communities, very poor communities. I worked in the inner city. I worked in the poorest county in North Carolina, and have just been exposed to so much, tried so hard to know stuff from the get-go, and was operating in the darkness and could not for the life of me figure out what was wrong with my health. Why did I have all this arthritis, all this fatigue, foot problems, back problems, ended up needing hysterectomy, needing glasses? Why am I such a pathetic creature? Well, because I was unschooled. All that knowledge all around me, and I was completely unschooled. And I had to be able to see it for myself and observe actual reality instead of all the junk I've been taught. And when I realized that you cannot notice that it's your juicing doing you in. You're doing it all this time and you cannot figure it out. And so it was my obligation as a moral person to say, hey, it's possible to work really hard on your health and ruin your health in the process. And I felt like at least I could do is leave behind a book, and someday somebody might find it on the library shelf and actually notice the value of it. Luckily, we're picking it up while I'm still here.
Oh my gosh, it's very successful. Like I've watched all your podcasts. I can see the comments. I'm really grateful that you took all of that trauma that you've been through, literally, because like you had a lot of physical pain, and it was not easy to go through all of that, and you transformed it into like your like worker mission right now. Like you've helped me, so thank you. I
All
really
I
appreciate
needed to
it.
do, I knew there was a sister out there who needed to hear this. And at the beginning, I really didn't think there was that many. But now I can see it's humanity in trouble. We have been eating so many potatoes and chocolate and peanuts and nuts and these basic foods that are acceptable, like peanut butter, that's okay to give a child, and beets, and start a child on pureed sweet potato. Like it's so normalized now that these health problems that it creates are normal. So it's okay to have learning disabilities as a child, and you just need a little medication for that and extra tutoring. What if it's the diet?
This brings us to the economic side. So I'm super interested in why is this even happening? So you've mentioned, and I've looked into it. I'm like, this makes so much sense. Like every other field is aware of this problem. Anthropology, chemistry, botany, toxicology, animal husbandry, they all know about oxalates. But for some reason, the human-based research is being ignored or not funded. It's avoided. We're being promoted all of these healthy superfoods, and it makes no sense to me. So I'd love to hear your point of view on the economic aspect of all of this.
Well, the food industry got real captured, and it started in the late 1800s. There was that whole, we talked about this sort of moral arc of if you live on bran and apple, somehow that's the right place to be morally, and you'll never, there was a whole philosophy that came from the Seventh-day Adventists that meat made you want sex. It would make you masturbate and do things that are immoral, and you would end up in hell. And we can't let that happen. We cannot let people go to hell because they can't control themselves because they're eating meat. So it became a real spiritual imperative that we take people off meat and give them something else. And Harvey Kellogg was a big leader in this area, and he grew to great prominence with his fancy sanitarium in Battle Creek, Michigan. And his guests at his place were elites, and President Hoover and major government people and other elites. And he taught them all that we could start living on nuts instead of meat. And he and his colleagues basically invented peanut butter. And it was at a time when we were trying to recover the Southern economy in the US. Because this is the late 1800s. We're now 15 years past the Civil War, and the economy in the South is terrible. There was a big blight with the cotton growing, the boll weevil or something terrible. And the poverty in the South was intense. And so the people leading up the agricultural stuff at the federal government were connected to the South, and we're trying to come up with a new economy for the South. So to save the economy, we were going to make peanut butter a food for humans, which it never was before. Peanuts were grown to feed pigs. But during the Civil War, there was complete lack of food for the soldiers, so they got the pig food and started using peanuts to keep the soldiers alive. It didn't kill them, and they kind of got used to them. And then so Harvey Kellogg was the one kind of inventing these nut meats and started thinking of nuts as food for humans, and even sort of an entree where meat used to be breakfast, lunch, and dinner. People immigrated to the US so they could afford to have meat, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Like that was living. But this was this new narrative that really came out of this elites adopting this Seventh-day Adventist moralism that built on the moralism that already existed from the whole temperance era, which preceded the Civil War, because alcoholism was a huge problem. So it always had these kind of moralistic roots in the modern Western version of vegetarian and veganism. And so now you have this Seventh-day Adventist church seeing food production for things like cornflakes and processed foods is a way to save the world. And they became the new industry of manufactured foods. So we invented factory foods, just at the end of the 1800s, and that became the future. So we're going to convert women from butter and lard to margarine and Crisco. We're going to move people from homemade foods to breakfast cereals invented by the Kellogg's brothers. We're going to move people to instant oatmeals, and they have to go to factory jobs, and they're working 6 days a week, and they have to walk to their jobs, so you can see how easily it would be to pick up the factory workers of 1900 and get them to be eating these convenience foods And so it was an easy sell. And then you could shame women into their wasteful ways of spending money on lard and butter when they could have this cheaper oleo, which is what margarine was called. And you could shame women into submitting to these factory foods rather than taking pride in homemade foods and homemade canning. We started to make people realize, no, those tin cans aren't as dangerous and ugly as you think. You don't have to do your own canning. So we just took away food production from the household, inserting these convenience foods into, the factory kind of economy. So it was a lot of economics going on there, but a lot of it was fueled by this ideology of the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
That's fascinating. I mean, as you were just talking about submitting women, most of the people who eat vegetables, like from my experience, it's just they're mostly women. It's like the men eat the meat and the women eat the fruits and vegetables. This is like a typical, general statement, but like
men understand they like their meat. They're willing to go with hedonistic tendencies. They go, I like meat. It tastes good. It makes me feel good. And I guess the whole testosterone helps them stay true to that, whereas somehow estrogen leads us astray.
I don't know. I'm like, seriously, it's unfortunate.
We women also like the taste of animal foods. We love cheese and butter and eggs and omelets and cakes that we make with them. We just do enjoy animal foods as a species because that's our niche. We're designed to like salt and occasional sweets because we have sweet taste. So go ahead and get the honey out and like be brave enough to get the honey. Like it took a certain kind of chutzpah to get honey, right?
Speaking of which, how did you reconcile consuming animal-based foods with your more spiritual and empathic side?
I was forced out of veganism by allergies. Like I could no longer eat wheat. It was clearly my fatigue. I'm in graduate school trying to get through statistics and just can't focus. And I'm just exhausted and kind of coma-like. And I'm starting to connect it with my addiction to heavy, fresh, whole wheat bread and eating beans and so on all the time. I could see the connection. If I ate more of the bread, I was more tired. And I started realizing, you know what, you're reacting to wheat and bread. So I had to cut that out. And then I realized this like acne thing, I get like a pimple that would last 2.5 years. I just sit there. And I finally figured out that was the tofu and the legumes. And I was like, oh, I can't eat beans or wheat. So how do you stay vegan and have anything to eat? What, am I going to live on lettuce? I don't think so. Not at 5'8.5". You're not going to live on lettuce. So, rabbit gets by with that for a few weeks, but they don't live long. So then I had to introduce like turkey, not knowing that soy was in turkey, and I'm still getting soy. And struggled with that process. But the minute I started living more on chicken and poultry for a while, and then later learned to understand that red meats were a good idea.
Yeah, and when it comes, if we're open to going down that rabbit hole, we realize that like regenerative farming is actually incredibly beneficial for the planet. And when we're actually open to going down that rabbit hole, we realize that maybe in reality, vegan and vegetarian diets aren't that good for the planet just because of all the transportation that's involved, everything, pesticides, the list goes on and on, the oxalates. So, yeah, it's fascinating. Like I get my meat from a local farmer. It's 20 kilometers away. It's super close. I don't have to go to the grocery store anymore. And there's nothing to sell carnivores.
Maybe some frozen scallops and shrimp, maybe.
Yeah. A couple of things. I have reincorporated some fruit just because I needed it for the electrolyte.
Yes. You can't live on pure protein. You need some fuel. Carbs are good for women.
Overall, when you look at all the packaging, all the hyper processed foods, all of the weird ingredients, it's like you don't need any of that once you go animal-based or carnivore, or you just adopt a diet that doesn't include oxalates or any, self-poisoning. It's just clear signal.
It does unplug you from a lot of the commercialism, doesn't it? It does. You're a bit of an outsider when you go into a big box store. It's like, this is a museum of what people do around me.
Right? Oh my gosh, it's so weird. I've had that moment of like, I felt like I was in another reality. I'm just like, okay, weird. It was, it's strange.
So I find that a little bit troubling because we forget how people really are consuming what they really do have margarine in their refrigerators. They really do have processed foods, processed cheese, strange nut mixes. Everyone has a bag of almonds and a box of peanuts and some buckwheat something somewhere. So they've got soda pop and cookies and cake mixes. And some of them are all the gluten-free stuff full of high oxalate ingredients that are still factory foods that really are not true to our niche. And to have to see that and let go of all the beauty of those pretty packages, and those packages are beautifully designed. They're cute. They look good in your cupboard.
Mm-hmm.
How are you going to live with just like frozen meat in your fridge and leftover bacon? Poor you.
Oh man, I have so many more questions for you, Sally. Seriously, we don't have much time left, so I don't want to leave the audience without at least talking a little bit about detoxing. Like, how do we get this out of our system?
Well, we don't do it. We trust our body to do it. We don't think we know more than our body does. First of all, we step back and humbly say, body, you are so wise. I humble myself to you. I am the servant of you, my darling. I love you, my body. Tell me what to do. I'm listening for once. I'm finally going to listen to you. So number one, quit trying to tell your body what to do, how much to release, how quick you want to release it. Let's get this over fast. No, you are not the leader. You are not the coach. You are the humble servant of a process that your body is working with. Now, you've put your body in this terrible state of wanting and wanting and wanting and wanting for years to unload this stuff. And you're going to give it an opportunity when you stop loading up your bloodstream after every meal. You know, and that process takes several hours, but after every meal, you've been flooding your liver and your bloodstream, and the body's like, okay, here they come. Everybody, hold on. Here's more of this stuff. So eventually the hulls clear out and the bloodstream's like, that meal didn't have oxalate. And that happens for 3 days in a row. And the body goes, look, guys, it's been 3 whole days. This is our big chance. Get ready. And so the cells start changing what they're doing. And the cells are like, time to get rid of it. Yay. And it starts getting rid of it. And if everybody's on board at the same time, then that's like having all the planes grounded and everybody's stuck in one airport. It's way too busy. You can't move. You're all boxed in and you're toxic as heck. So you don't want that to happen. You don't necessarily need that to happen. Just slow down that, that super danger zone of the spinach smoothies and spinach salads and spinach this and almonds this all the time. Like, stop doing the worst of whatever things you're eating, which might be potatoes. So for some men, especially, it tends to be potatoes. They want some form of potatoes every single day. And, if you could pick one and just slowly work on that and let your body adjust and start learning a little bit how your body's responding to this. Sometimes you won't notice anything for a while. I've had people come to me after 6 years of eating just meat. Now they can feel the oxalates moving. Now they're getting arthritis, they're getting kidney pain, they're getting cloudy urine, they're getting grumpy, they're getting sleep problems. These are signs of oxalate toxicity that's coming from the release of oxalic acid from the tissues. And for some of us, they feel it right away. They already have it going on anyway. And when they slow down, they just immediately start feeling better. Some people feel great for 2 days, a week, 2 weeks, 2 months, and then all of a sudden they're not feeling as good. And that's this reintoxication with oxalic acid coming out of wherever. And that is a problem. You do not want to let that go raging and be really strong. You don't want to be dumping poisonous acid in your bloodstream. You're going to have arrhythmias. You're going to have vascular damage. You could end up with hypertension attacks. You'll end up in the emergency room with either a kidney stone or thinking you're having a heart attack or a stroke because your electrolytes are getting so deranged. And you're really promoting a lot of inflammation in the body. And that chronic inflammation will cause problems you need to avoid. So it's okay to keep some of these foods and learn to do it well. People can be really good at releasing oxalate through the colon. The colon will help out. So you want to slow that down a little bit by maybe eating some oxalate. You want to take, check your urine pH and make sure you're not really acidic, because the colon will do more if it detects the kidneys are under stress and you're really acidic. Those two factors turn on this colon excretion of oxalate. So you may need to do some more alkalizing with lemon juice or bicarbonates or, Alka-Seltzer Gold. There's lots of things. Taking minerals helps with alkalization, but try to get your urine pH up closer to 7, and you can keep alkalizing until you get up to 8. Like, you want to do that to help the colon, but eating some tea, 4 grams of tea leaves That's equivalent of 2 tea bags. Use that to make a strong cup of tea, maybe in the morning. Get some more oxalates with dinner, maybe 3 ounces of beet juice, or maybe a handful of sweet potatoes that you can buy frozen, already peeled. Just grab a little from the freezer and throw it into whatever you're making for dinner. And that can be enough of a signal that the body's reading and going, oh, there you are eating oxalates. I guess the halls aren't as clear as we thought. I guess we'll slow down this process, because there's no benefit to trying to rush this and let this, oh, I'll just be toxic for a while till it's gone. No, super dangerous. So, and then there may be some calcium you can have. There may be some dairy foods you can tolerate. You may be able to use eggshells or oyster shell or ground up bone. You can dry out bones from animals you trust and turn it into a powder. And you could come up with your own forms of calcium that you can mix into your food or whatever, and find a way where you can tolerate that calcium. But calcium can sometimes encourage this colonic dumping, because that's really why we're taking it, because it is the binder that removes oxalate from the body. So you get enough calcium and that tells the body, look, we can get rid of it. And so having the calcium in the colon protects you. It helps you release it. But in some cases, some people really, the colon is very good at this, and it knows the calcium's there and it'll just increase it. But instead of limiting your calcium level, you want to raise your oxalate intake. That's why you need the book, and you need to come to my group classes, and you need to plug in and learn and learn and learn and relearn, because there is a certain craft to managing a chronic disease like this.
You have done so many amazing podcasts. You've really gone into detail about how to detox from this. And then I do highly recommend the book. If you want an actual plan to get through it, it's really helpful. I refer to it all the time. I'm moving to Europe and I'm taking it with me. I'm not taking much with me, Sally. I'm taking 2 luggage. So it's going to be in there. It's really important. So if any listeners really want to go down the rabbit hole, I recommend checking out any of the podcasts. You can come at this from a thyroid problem, carnivore, nutrition. You've done so many different podcasts in different spaces. So 2 of your group meetups, I actually was present for one, and then I missed the other one, unfortunately. You over deliver, Sally. It's you receive the recording, you receive a massive file with a ton of information. It's so helpful. I've referred back to it a bunch of times. And then you get to see all these beautiful people from around the world. There was just so many elderly women who are sharing their stories about how they've empowered themselves, how they've helped themselves overcome so many issues that they had, like arthritis and stuff. I can open a jar. That's amazing. I wish my grandmother could say that to me, because she's hella plant-based. And unfortunately, she won't be able to do this. But yeah, I'm very glad to see other people who can embrace this change. So Sally, in one of your interviews, you said, and I'm quoting you, I'm the least coolest nerd in nutrition school. I thought it was funny, but I think you're a hero. Honestly, thank you for everything that you've done. I really appreciate it. So where else can people find you other than in podcasts and your book and your group?
Well, you can find me at SallyKNorton.com. That's the best place to reach out, is email me through the website and learn from the website. Look at my about page and just come be part of our family. Those other women who are substituting for grandma, we get each other now, and the bond that we have with each other is spiritual in nature and is precious. So I'm really glad that we're connecting and that you're connecting your audience. And yeah, my website's the best place to go, but also check out my YouTube channel, because there is a small collection of some great stories. The short videos, there's little 1-minute ones. There's 22 of those. There's, I don't know where we are, 10 or 12, 15-minute videos of stories. We're going to keep coming out as we get it together with more of those, but they can help you connect and help you connect other people.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, Sally. I really appreciate your time and all the work that you're doing in your Lightworker mission. Thank you.
Thank you. Lovely.